My house is still chaos from flooding, and I feel like it's a good representation of what my mind is, as well as like out of order.
Yeah. Do you want to just give us a status update on your house?
Yeah. The person was supposed to come today to clean the carpet because we would need to clean it to see if it's reusable. And we suspect it's reusable, which would be great because we just bought it not that long ago. But then the person's van broke down. So they're like so nice and just really apologetic. And they keep updating me on how long it's taking to be fixed. But a lot of things have to happen after this piece, and they can only happen after it. So, so the day when we can finally get back in and have everything be settled, it's just far. It feels far. It's probably not that far, but the kids are sleeping in the guest room and they think it's a little spooky in there. So one of us sleeps in there with them every night. And because when we're in there, we don't sleep as good because they're like fussy and chatty, then we just keep switching off. And so so last night was my night to sleep in there with them. And, it was a doozy, but it's cute also. Somehow while I'm doing it, I'm like, this is very sweet. This is an adventure we'll remember. I will be more tired tomorrow, which is today, which is now. But then tonight I'll sleep in my bed and Sean will sleep in there. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Is there a benefit to solo bed? Like,
I love a solo bed. Love a solo bed. Yeah, for sure. I really thoroughly enjoy it. Yeah, that part's fun.
Yeah, a husband is nice, but also starfishing in your bed.
Oh, and he's really
also
tall
nice.
and has like big limbs, and he has no awareness of like his limb on my face, which is often. Oh, so many nights. No. But but he doesn't know. And the next morning he's very sorry. I'm like, you punch me in the face again. Yeah. He's like, oh. So one day we'll get a king size bed or a Californian king or something, and it'll all make sense.
That makes sense. You're king size people, king and queen size people.
I think so. Eventually that'll be like a leveling up is when we've gotten bigger beds. But once you get a huge bed in a room that isn't really made for a huge bed, it changes everything in there too. So I don't know. But it'll all come. Bigger beds, bigger rooms, all the things.
Yeah, it's the cost of having an empire, I guess.
Oh, so true. Yeah. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about something really important that I'm so excited.
No. Now you have to say,
I'm Jessica Hover.
I'm Lane Dealing Cherland, and this is Very Good Enough, a podcast from Very Good Mothers Club. We forgot to say that recently.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, we sometimes forget.
Do we?
And then I just play the music straight over.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, you start us. I have so many thoughts on this topic.
Okay, I'm really looking forward to it, but I wanted to start by just
I'm afraid if I swallow into the microphone, you'll hear me.
Oh, that's so funny. From my perspective, it looks like for the listener and non-viewer, there's a leaf directly in between us, and it looks like she's ducking behind the leaf to try and find me.
I sort of
I want to, so we're going to talk about the idea of like mothers being martyrs or feeling like they need to be or accidentally becoming or being pressured to be so from the outside. But really, to me, like that's a conversation about an inside journey and identity. And I kind of wanted to hear actually more from you about really some of the history of you and previous identities that you've had, and then the transition between those things into motherhood. Because I feel like in so many stories about your life and your history, there's like all these like spots that get brought up, but I don't understand the way that they work together.
Yeah.
And like, where is fashion next to really, I guess it's if you could give me your work history, please.
Yeah. Well, interestingly.
It's a lot of like really separate things. I'm so curious.
Yeah, separate things that all sort of piled on top. And it was never easy to explain, even pre-kids. Like even with people who I worked with, I'd be like, so this is one piece of all of these things. But it is important when it relates to motherhood, because I think it's part of what made the transition into motherhood a bit like of a jolt. Was it reshaped my identity, and I was no longer working jobs that I had worked previously, and so it just made it all a little bit weird for me internally. But okay,
So like you graduated high school. What's your high school job?
Graduated high school. Oh, in high school, I worked a lot of jobs, and I thought that was pretty cool. I think because jobs paid you money, and having money seemed like a good idea.
Yes.
So, and then when I finished high school, I did a little tiny stint in community college and didn't really know what I wanted to do and wasn't loving that. The class I loved was communications, which is no surprise because I like to chat. But yeah, so then I knew that I wanted to be in LA. That was like my big thing. My mom was from Southern California. My grandma lived here. I would like come visit every summer. At that point, my grandma no longer was here, but I wanted to be here. I thought perhaps I would want to like dance or act or something in the entertainment industry. And so I was really trying to figure out a way to get out here. Also had an encounter with like a faith experience, basically, that was really monumental in my life at the time. And that led me to somebody telling me about a program here in LA, which was through a Christian-based nonprofit called YWAM. If you guys have followed my videos for a while, you probably already know this part. So then I found out that they ran a 6-month-long school based out of LA where you live here for 3 months and then you go overseas for 3 months. So I did that and then ended up staying with that nonprofit and working with them for a few years. Within that organization, they do a lot of like leadership training, and then they are, it's a huge organization. They have it all around the world. So each city is very different, the stuff that they're doing in whatever city they're in. So I'll speak to my experience of the organization, but Google it. It can be confusing. In that organization, they do a lot of leadership training stuff, right? So I was learning that. And then I also knew I wanted to somehow work in entertainment or fashion. That was like still the thing that I was pretty, passionate about, but also I loved the influence of it. I loved that through this organization, I was traveling all over the world and I would end up in like really remote places, like jungle cities in Thailand or in Chile or like just different random places. And I would meet people who were being influenced by the people in my city here in LA who were like the fashion icons or like the entertainers or whatever. And I just thought, wow, that's so significant that these people here are shaping a culture for young women in these different parts of the world. So I wanted to work in fashion, almost like, because for me on a grand level, I thought if I could impact these people here, not just fashion, it was fashion and entertainment. I saw this overlap between those industries. Sure. If I could work with people here in those industries and I could help shape them and be a source of support for them. And when we talk identity, to me, those people have a really hard job when it comes to maintaining an identity that is real and secure and rooted because their life is so public. So yeah, I was kind of drawn to this idea of like, what if I could somehow be a part of this industry and positively impact these people, then I would also be positively impacting the girl I saw in this jungle town in Thailand, right?
That's interesting. It's kind of like an upstream, like I'm going to hit this sort of upstream place and then it's going to have this wider influence as like the influence spreads.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so I got involved in some different organizations here in LA that were nonprofits that specifically existed to support professionals in those industries. And then that led me to a volunteer opportunity backstage at Fashion Week. I mean, if people really want like the details of who I worked with, because I sometimes get like questions of how could I do these different things, you're welcome to write and we can like tell you all of them. But then I got a volunteer opportunity working backstage at Fashion Week in LA and then in New York City, just dressing models, which is like, on the scale of important, I was not an important person. You know, you're just a volunteer filling a job. Sure. But it's also important because those people have to be dressed when they walk the runway.
Very important that the clothes are in fact applied to the body prior to.
But you just have to understand if you're going to work that job, nobody backstage thinks you're important. You will not be treated with a lot of respect. But it was an amazing, amazing time in my life and lots of really, really cool stories that I could share at a different time about that. what it led to was opportunities to then work with designers who like invited me to different places to work with them more like one-on-one, and then ended up really being special. Like I was invited to direct fashion shows and work with some really prominent people that I was so excited to be a part of their like stories. And all of it had this faith element too. So for me, it was really, this is like a really personal, like a passion thing that I'm getting to do these things that are just fashion or just entertainment. But to me, it was like, wow, I'm really positively impacting these people's lives, and they are impacting so many lives. Like what a meaningful experience all of this is. At the same time, so that was one piece of working with YWAM. So interestingly, they basically like, I was a staff member of YWAM, but they like released me. The thing is, you don't get paid working for YWAM, so it's not that hard for them to release you to things.
Sure.
Basically, so it all kind of fell under this umbrella of I work for this nonprofit, but within that, I have time to go serve these other nonprofits. And then I was made a director of one of those, and that then created more opportunities within the world of fashion. I'm still speaking like very vaguely, but I think you're tracking a bit.
We're piecing this together a little more.
And then I also started another kind of branch of my own personal organization underneath YWAM, which was speaking to girls and women in different parts of the world on beauty, identity, and value. So we called that Beauty Arise. It no longer exists, but it did at the time in LA, and then it popped up in different cities and different parts of the world. And it was really, really cool. It was something I did with friends who I cared a lot about. And we would teach on these topics, beauty, identity, and value. We would bring volunteers to different fashion events. We would run all kinds of things. In Switzerland, they were doing galas for women. It was so cool. It was this whole thing around women and identity. So that really is now, like, if you know any of that, then you see what I'm doing now is really not that different from what I've been doing. It's just when I became a mom, and then it was like a very bumpy transition into becoming a mom. But eventually, when the waves settled a little bit, I was like, oh, it's still women. I'm still surrounded by women. It's just now these women are moms.
Right.
And the topics of beauty, identity, value are still super relevant. But now we just have this whole other way of seeing things and a whole new level of responsibility that we're carrying. And so all I've done now is try to use the same passion, same skills, same tools that I have and serve women, but now it's just a different group of women. But some of them are not different. Some are the same, we've just kind of grown together and now we have babies together.
Yeah.
And my heart is still very much for people in the industry. Like I don't work in any capacity with professionals in entertainment or fashion anymore, but it's on my mind constantly. And my hope would even be that through serving moms, maybe some of these professionals who are super influential would be people that we could serve through our resources once they become parents and need help in a different direction. I just have a tender spot for entertainers.
I love that. I love that about you. Could you tell us a little bit about the transition from like feeling like I'm a professional person into feeling like I'm a mother and like how those played together for you? And if that was smooth and easy, that's fine too. I just am wanting to sort of like tease out your personal experience with like exactly what we're about to talk about.
It was, in my experience, easier to be a not mother to not be a mother and find an identity in a professional space. And a lot of it was because it felt measurable. Like I could measure success. I could even describe it and be respected for it. I think also some of it was on me in the way that I viewed motherhood. I think I remember talking to different people about this, trying to like pick their brains to understand. I felt like women were like these amazing rich, like complex people. And then they became moms and they were non-people. Like they were just flat, like everything. I mean, even down to like social media, I'm like, why are they suddenly just only about their kids? Why are they only about moms? Like, I just don't get it. I didn't get it. And I worked with some moms who like were really intelligent, capable, professionals. And then when they became moms, they like fell off the map, and I felt frustrated by it. I was like, maybe I was frustrated because I didn't want it to happen to me.
Yeah.
Maybe also I was like, this seems so unfair. Like, why is that? Why are you and your kid is suddenly something? And like, what an unfair thing. Even like to grow up and then be like, okay, but one day I'll be a parent. That the turmoil in me is like, why? Like, why sign up to be nothing, to raise your kid to be like, you can be anything you want to be, but then actually have that not be true, because
unless you're
if you're a girl who will grow up to be a mom, you can be anything you want to be until you're a mom. That was a lot of my like conflicted thinking.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And
did you then feel like that happened to you when like you're pregnant, this baby comes out?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like you passed through the veil?
I was definitely afraid of it, and I was like fighting with it. I was trying to understand what this is. And the role that I had working as a director of this faith-based nonprofit in the industry, it was in the fashion industry specifically, that job ended in a way that was pretty painful for me. It wasn't great. And that happened soon before I had my baby. And so I already was feeling like, oh, like this didn't go as I intended for it to go. I don't totally understand what went wrong. I was also, how old was I? Like 26 or something. Which I say my age because like if this happened now, maybe I would see things that I didn't see at that point.
Yeah, that's pretty young.
Yeah, right. So becoming a mom, basically, I was like, okay, well, I'm not what I was before, but I sort of saw that coming. I am not really sure what it's going to look like now in motherhood. And what I really wanted was for motherhood to be like part of my life, like almost like you could know me and not really know if I'm a mom. Like, oh, she's this, she's that, she's so whatever. And oh yeah, and she also has kids. Like, isn't that so cool?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be so overtaken by motherhood. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work because the responsibility of a new baby is absolutely all consuming for a time. And that's okay. But it's like, if you can have the mentality to expect it, then it's not as crazy. I watch friends who are having their first baby now in like their mid 30s. And one I'm thinking of in particular, it's like she was so much more prepared for that. And I wonder, would I be more prepared for it now to just basically be like, oh yeah, for a whole year, I'm like super on demand, like especially if you're a breastfeeding mom, right?
Yeah.
For me, I think I was so trying to like protect myself, like, no, stay a person, that it made it really hard to be like, just because you are fully giving yourself to motherhood right now doesn't mean you're a non-person. It just means you are a whole person who has just become a whole mother. But like you can do that and be whole. And like it, just because it's a temporary time of giving yourself to this, that doesn't equal loss of self. That can actually be whole self, giving self to something.
Yeah.
And then after that stage passes, because in my experience or my opinion, the first year is like super intense. If you have a bunch of money and a bunch of resources and a bunch of help and night nurses.
Yeah, night nurses is a thing I learned about recently.
Man. Oh,
wow.
If you have all of these things, it's possible you could become a mom and not experience what I'm talking about.
Sure.
I think. But if you don't, it is a 24/7 total life flip. And that can be really confusing. And for me, it was definitely a push and pull of like, I really want this. I'm so thankful I have my daughter. Also, I don't really like this. Why? Like, is this going to stay this hard? Will it always feel like this? Do some people experience what I'm experiencing and like it? What's wrong with me that I don't?
Right. Even like the difference between what a year felt like when I was 26 versus it's only been 5 years. I'm just 31 now. Yeah. A year feels so doable. I'm like, oh yeah, I can regulate myself for a year.
Right.
Whereas then everything was so like, you're just so
different
in your life.
Yes. Yeah.
And fewer years makes a difference.
It does.
In the way that
really
things feel.
Does. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And if you have a baby who's crying a lot and someone's like, oh, this will only last like the first 5 months. And you're like, 5 months? I can barely get through 48 hours.
Yeah, it's a lot of effing days in 5 months. Like, are you
I'm
kidding?
Yeah. But then you have great days with your babies, same time of life. And you're crying like, why is the time going so fast? You know, I've been that girl.
Yeah.
It can be confusing. Yeah.
Jess,
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to hear that from you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had 3 kids, right?
Yeah.
It's gotten easier. And I think part of why having babies got easier was because I dealt with some of the identity stuff. So then second baby, I knew what to expect. And a lot I learned first go. And then I also think for the mom having babies now, there is a lot more out there to help people with this transition.
Do you mean like there's a lot more information and like different perspective like out in public and available in the last 7-ish years?
Definitely.
Okay.
And even like communities you can join, or mom resources, or even just you can put something out on the internet and describe how you're feeling, and it will be so much more likely that people will be like, oh yeah, you're normal. That is not crazy. I feel that too. Whereas when I vividly remember, my daughter was like 5 weeks old. I'm Googling things, specifically Googling things like, will motherhood get better? And I couldn't find it. I mean, what I found was people who were either like, I love motherhood. This is a dream come true. Or, mostly that, like nothing. I mean, maybe there was a little bit about postpartum depression, but what I was talking about, what I was looking for wasn't your like, you have an ailment, you need medication. I was looking for like any sort of normalizing, or I've been there, it gets better. But to hear only from the moms who are like, this is my dream come true, or there's something actually wrong with you, which is sort of what I suspected. Like, is something wrong with me? I arrived to motherhood and I guess I'm really bad at it, or I'm not cut out for this, or like I shouldn't tell people that this is as hard as it is. Now I just think, thankfully, people are more open and honest. Yeah. And it's helpful.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think back to, well, obviously I'm not a mother, and we've discussed many a time my many fears. And a lot of what will come in this episode is me actually really mulling over a very, very beautiful message that a friend from Santa Barbara sent me after our very second episode. In which I laid out a lot of my fear and the things that you're describing. But what I've seen of mothers is like preschool is a very special place because a lot of moms have to be there. A lot of them have to be there in the moments after they've had a baby, because they're trying to get this older kid out of the house so that they can go home and lay down and just like hold this little baby, because there's no paternity leave or whatever. So like we get moms in our classroom or in the office. Our office in particular was like a hosting place. Wow. It's like the very first room, and there's always coffee and there's a sofa and the director is in there and my desk was in there. And it's like sort of this secret landing space where a lot of women would come in like so like truly ragged, which I mean as like a descriptor and not as a judgment, but like genuinely just like raw nerves and visibly so. And it was like a secret that they were bringing of like, this is awful. And their voices would drop and they would like feel so bad. And it was like, I think the secret nature of it, like this weird need to be like, I'm just going to rush to get my kid like out and away. And then my own body that's dressed like this and looks like this, like as hidden as possible. In fact, could you take my kid to their class and I'll just stay right here in this office of like trying to hide away this thing of like, I feel awful. And then that need for secrecy, I think is part of this whole thing.
Yeah, it's so vulnerable, especially the daycare preschool drop off. The number of times I dropped Eloise off in Spain at that daycare and I was crying. So many. And times I would be late and they're like, you can't be late. And I would just burst into tears. I'm like, I am trying so hard. Like, I hear you. And I am lost. You guys see us in a state that's like, oh, you're really seeing how we're doing.
Yeah.
I heard a funny story actually. I think this was on the internet. Maybe a woman was like, yeah, I picked up my kid from daycare, and another kid came over and asked where his other mommy is, and I was like, oh no, I'm his only mommy. And he was like, no, there's the one that drops him off in the morning. And the pretty mommy who picks him up. It's the same woman, but she looks ragged in the morning.
Makes so much sense.
Oh my God. It's really
buddy.
true. That's how that goes. Anyway.
Okay, so there's this like tremendously pervasive idea, which then sort of becomes this feeling, and like it's into our subconscious and our culture and starts to feel automatic, and then sometimes it even gets called biological.
Okay.
This idea that like mothers are to empty themselves on behalf of or for these ones that they love.
Yeah.
And that is noble and good and right, and in fact will bring them happiness. It's the only way to true happiness. And also that it's the way to show that you're doing a good job, that you're being a good mother.
Yeah.
And that stuff, there are so many places that it comes from, but when it gets like way down deep inside, sometimes even it can come to this place of being like, I need to demonstrate how much of myself I'm giving away by being busy, tired, I just like out of breath, in a hurry, looking a little bit frazzled, even in its extreme ends, like getting sick, to show like, oh, but I've so fully given myself. Look at what a good job I'm doing. Look at what a good woman I am, what a good person I am, how valuable I am, that I'm just emptying.
Yeah.
And that, gosh, it comes from so many places, but like, in a lot of like classic literature and portrayals of mothers, even in the way that people talk about like, my mother was a saint. What they mean is my mother did nothing for herself ever and just gave and gave and gave to us. My mother was only mother. My mother was not a woman. My mother was not a person. My mother was a vehicle for the things that I needed. And how saintly is that?
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't want to denigrate giving or generosity, or that there are ways that can be very beautiful, and there are things that it can nurture in a person to be someone who really gives. And I do think that there's an experience of, it sounds like there's an experience of becoming a mother and feeling this shift in priority that's like, wow, interesting. Like I'm so not at the center of my life anymore. Yeah. And I don't think there's a way to get that actually without that experience, which is a pro-baby argument.
Right.
Even for like the personal experience of being like, I didn't know how much at the center of my life my own comfort was. Right. So I don't want to be detracting from those things. Totally. But where it's embedded in our culture, it comes from a nasty place sometimes of like really deeply undervaluing women as artists and creatives and leaders and producers and like people with output. Yeah. And then also there's actually like a really negative connotation, or a lot of like depictions in art and media of female pleasure and enjoyment. They tend to be very negative when we have stories about women like living very viscerally or choosing something that's non-conventional because it feels good to them or because they're full of passion. Often in story, like movies and literature, those women are then punished. They often die. Right? Like literally those characters will be killed. That's just a real thing that comes from all kinds of gnarly places, but like it's willfully closing your eyes to not recognize that those forces are at play in the things that we feel pressed to do, whether that pressure feels inside or we feel it actually coming from outside. Like these are some of the things that really shape our views of motherhood, the ways that we look at one another as mothers, the things that we applaud women for or that we tear them down for. They come from like these big cultural pressures. Totally. And I think it's gotta get talked about some more, like really inside the topic of motherhood. There are all kinds of like think pieces written about women and their position and mothers and their position in like, you know, journals and things. Right. But like in the motherhood space. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that there's space to be having this conversation where it like really exists
Totally.
and is happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I recently was talking to Eloise about something related to girls learning. And I said, in some places and throughout history, girls weren't really allowed to learn, like they weren't allowed to have an education.
Mm-hmm.
And her response was like, to me, like, oh yeah, that is so crazy. She couldn't believe it. She's like, what? It's like, what were they supposed to do? And then she goes, were they supposed to have babies? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, but some don't have babies. And I was like, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, but girls are so smart and they do so many things.
Yeah.
Like, it's really true. So we don't take our education for granted. Like we are thankful. We live here and we get to do things as women.
Yeah.
But even to a simple mind who is just kind of processing these ideas for the first time, it's like, wait, what? Girls are so much more than the baby makers. Now, some of us love, and I know this because I lead women. I talk to moms all the time. Some of us love making babies, growing babies, tending to babies, homemaking. I was talking to a mom this week. She's like, it is my passion to be a homemaker. And I love that. Like to me, Jessica, I love that.
Yeah. Same.
I personally love my kids, love that I'm a mom now, which for a time that was not my experience. I do love it now, but I need motherhood to look differently than that woman who's telling me about how much she loves homemaking. If I try to squeeze myself into her life and get passionate about making laundry detergent, I will feel lost. But if she tried to squeeze herself into my life, caring about things that all kinds of random things I could tell you more about me, but she would not be happy. Right? Like there's so much about this that has to do with who we are and giving ourselves permission to ask, like, okay, beyond caring for our babies in a responsible, generous, loving way, what else is going on in there that will make us feel alive and well and whole?
But even to the mother who loves it and has been waiting her whole life for this and takes incredible joy and pleasure from the tasks of caring for small children and caring for a home, it's that incredible joy and pleasure that I want to like highlight and talk about, because if these are the things that are passion, wonderful. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Like that's so cool that this particular piece of your identity aligns with what makes you feel alive. But like it's about the fact that like that's visceral for you and that's like deep and special for you, the person, without vacating your body and letting this like body vehicle be like a task machine. Like, there's a way to lose the passion. Yeah. Even if you were the person who wanted to be a mom so bad. Yeah.
Sometimes, don't you think, maybe not, but I was thinking about this just yesterday. I was very stressed. Our home is in disarray. I've said that. There's just a lot going on right now. Yeah. And I had a moment where I was like, oh, I'm sort of not in my body right now. I'm just getting through the moment. And the follow-up thought was, that's okay if it's just for right now to get through. Sure. You have these moments, but like the survival moment. But if you are living like that constantly, then you're just surviving. And I looked up the word martyr just to make sure I understood. The second definition that I think relates to this says a person who displays or exaggerates their discomfort or distress in order to obtain sympathy or admiration. Wow. And I was thinking, when it comes to motherhood, when it gets to this point where we are pouring ourselves out to the point of distress because we think it is what will lead to being admired. Yeah. There's some red flags waving like that is in any job, in anything that we're doing. If we get to the point of like, I need to suffer so someone else somewhere else will think I did a good job, there's probably some backing up we need to do to go like, okay, how can we do this differently? Because you can pour yourself out for the sake of the ones you love, serving them to the point of being exhausted, and still have a sense of self-respect, worthiness, and like, yep, I did that for these 3 days because that was super important and necessary. But now on this day, it's a refresh day, a reset day, you know, like, or within motherhood, sometimes we don't get a whole day of refreshing. Like I was talking to a friend, the weekends for me right now in this current stage of parenting are not like, oh, good, the weekend's here. It's actually, I'm pretty tired after a weekend because it's so much caretaking. So then I have to find little moments throughout the day to be like, okay, pull back. What's going to bring me some refreshment or some joy or some strength, or what do I need to build into my week with Sean to say like, I need a social break, or like right now we're switching off who gets more sleep,
right?
Because we recognize we both need sleep, but life is just a demanding one right now. And yeah, you pick your battles, I guess. But
all the things that you're describing come from a place of having already acknowledged, like, I'm a person who lives inside my life. One of the things in my life is that I'm a mother, and it's a big one. Huge, and it takes up most of my time. Yeah. It does not take up most of who I am, right? Like my me essence exists. Right. And part of what it does is this thing. But like, we can get into this kind of weird psychological space where we start to take care of other people, thinking that that's going to then make some kind of care come back at us somehow magically and mysteriously. And it isn't. Actually, taking care of people is output. And where you need care to come in, that's a thing that you have to say, like, I actually deserve to be taken care of. Right. Like, I need to be taken care of. I have needs. And what those are for each person, whether motherhood is your passion, or whether you are a visual artist, or whether you are someone who leads a company and is like excellent at managing large groups of people or huge amounts of money or whatever, like your need is going to be very different. But believing and drawing back to yourself your own value as a human, detaching it from motherhood, even saying like, motherhood is a thing that I do and it's part of who I am and I love it. My value is intrinsic because I'm a human who's alive. And I'm going to do the things that fill my body and fill my heart and my spirit because I'm a human who's alive. And a lot of that's going to include and be related to my children. And if it isn't, then I've got to figure out how to be the person that I am. Not even though I have these children, but especially because I have these children. Definitely. So I was mentioning to you a few minutes ago that some of the simmering thoughts that I have about this are coming from a voice memo that I got like 6 months ago. I just said this, on the podcast? I don't know. After our very second episode. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very second.
Right. Yeah. So this beautiful friend sent me this just tremendously amazing bunch of thoughts about what motherhood, the transition into motherhood was like for her at an identity level. And basically, like, what I have been noodling on now for the last 6 months is like, could motherhood be an additive identity rather than one that is like stripping away? Could it be an initiation into more rather than like the draining out of everything in order to make space for me to be nothing and take care of now it's their life and not my life anymore? Like, what if there are people now watching the way that you live and like, there's totally, when somebody has a baby, like this new thing comes over you where you're like, nothing matters. And that's super biological, right? Like, that baby's got to live. And that feeling is well documented of like, well, nothing matters. And people having to be like, yes, it does. Eat this food, go take a shower. Like, that's totally reasonable. But if you're like a new mom holding your little baby girl, thinking about that girl becoming a mother someday, the idea that experience for her would be that she disappears and a new person exists, that is not the dream for that person. No. But like, these people now watch you live and watch you be a person, and you want for them full, rich lives as exactly who they are. And you must therefore be exactly who you are. Right? Like, finding that way, whether you have limited time and capacity now for this or that or whatever your thing is, but like finding a way to have that be part of your life and have yourself be like really like I wanted to say resident inside your body. You know, you got to live in here.
Living there.
And the things that you love mattering, and there being time for that. Like, that's how your children will learn how to also live and be people.
And it models to them that parenthood is really fun because it is a fun part of your life. And it is this weird thing of like, it's a part of you and it's so a part of you that you can't really separate it. There's no, like, even to look at my physical body, if you saw me naked, which you won't, I'm a mom. There's visible evidence of that. I would have to pay money to remove it and it would probably still be there. There's no separating, and yet they are separate because to take care of me as a human, take care of my body, my mind, my soul is what allows me to fully be inside of my parenting and enjoy it and model for them. I mean, really model for them. Like, being a mom is so fun. It is such a special part of my life. If you guys choose to go the route of having kids, I'm so excited for you. Versus, I'm suffering. Oh gosh, one day my girls might choose to be moms and that's going to be hard, you know?
Or also, look how much I'm suffering for you, child. Give me gratitude.
Which is a backwards way of getting your needs met and not a really good one in any relationship.
No, but also you, whether you believe in divine providence or randomness or people's souls choosing to embed themselves in a life that they want to experience or whatever, in some way, you're the person who is this person's mother. And like, you're the right person to be their mother. And if yourself is not available, like they're missing out on something in life. Like, they chose you or you chose them or God chose you or something happened that made you be their person. So like, you being the most you is a benefit to your child. And also something that you have an inherent right to. Because you're here. Like, you matter as much as they do. And you're both here together, two whole people in a relationship.
And it's so important that we understand if we are suffering in some way inside of motherhood, if we really feel like, wow, I am just not my best, I don't know what's going on, that is not a life sentence once you become a mom. I've wondered if previous generations, that they didn't know if it was possible to feel better like after the transition to motherhood. I have someone I love in my life, a family member, who said like, becoming a mom is what ruined my life. Like, I never bounced back from that. And I wondered, did she know that she could bounce back? Like, did she ever have it modeled that someone became a mom and actually thrived? Meaning like as a whole human, like not that they were a good mom. I have no doubt they were good moms and that they provided for their kids' needs. But like, we now live in a time where this message is going to be more forthright than maybe our moms and grandmas would have experienced, that you can become a mom and it can be hard and it won't stay hard. You can get the help you need. You can feel okay again. Or you could feel okay and then go through hard seasons and be like, okay, all right, got to pull it back. Like, what do I need to do to be okay? Versus, I became a mom. There's the end of my life. Now's the beginning of something new. And that's just that.
Yeah. And you may live in a community or a family or even be in a marriage where the people around you are not like aware of this kind of thing, or may even like not know to value it, or may even actually try to put a little bit of a damper on that. And you may need to advocate for yourself if you're like, oh, actually, I'm not fully living. Like, I've given up more than I need to in order to do a good job at this. And I now need to go find some of that more and go ahead and have that for myself. Like, that may be a thing that you need to advocate for, and you can, and you get to, and that's your right. Not even in a harsh way of like, I need to assert my right, but like,
no, please
you're allowed to have that.
We care about you. It's interesting. Like, even starting in pregnancy, your body will begin putting the needs of your child above your own. And that just means you then take in more to take care of your body. So like, a friend, she was doing a coaching group actually for Very Good Mothers Club. So if you're in there, you might have heard Julie Fernandez say this, but she was talking about how as you grow a baby, the baby needs calcium. And if you don't have extra calcium, the calcium will start coming from your teeth. So you'll start getting cavities for the first time in your whole life because your baby requires calcium to grow. Beautiful that your body would do that. Really cool. And also, please then take in more
Yeah.
calcium. You don't have to have holes, right? I mean,
No.
just it is a weird thing. Our teeth get fragile. So even if you're taking calcium, you might have weird
Right.
teeth stuff during pregnancy.
But like because you have this output, it may mean that your needs are greater and you actually get to take in more than you ever have in your whole entire
they
life.
They will very likely be greater. More calories, more love, more resting, more all kinds of things.
More painting, more baths, more films that fill your heart.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so crucial. And even if temporarily you're like, no, it's fine. I'm forgetting to eat. Like, no big deal. It's fine. It's not fine for the long term. And your body and your mind and your life is all you have. And so if this vessel isn't functioning properly, you don't even have the capacity to experience the fullness of joy that is possible around you.
Yeah.
If we are sick, if we are mentally not our best, if we're so exhausted that we can't see color or joy or whatever, then we're missing something. And there are temporary times where this makes sense, but they're temporary, very temporary. And I say this to moms a lot. If you're in the very early stage and you're just super exhausted, but you're doing everything you can to take care of yourself, remind yourself this is temporary and this is meaningful. All of this matters, what you're doing. But please take care of yourself in that process.
Yeah.
You still might take care of yourself and feel exhausted. And that's because growing a little baby and having this really young one depend on you all the time is exhausting by nature.
Absolutely. Whew. Let's leave it right there.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Take care of
Love you
yourselves.
guys so much. You're doing a great job.
Yeah. This has been so fun. And we are so grateful that you have given your time to listen to this podcast. And we're going to take a little break now. Season 2 is wrapped up. Season 3 is coming. Season 3.
I know. Look at us go.
So cool. So we're going to take a break right now. But during this break from recording, we are still going to be available in the Very Good Mothers Club membership community. So verygoodmothersclubhouse.com. And Lane and I will still be hosting calls.
If you want to give us your thoughts about the season, anything you want to see in the next season, like this is kind of the time to get in there and touch base with us and really help us craft what's going to serve you guys best for the next season. So we would love to connect with you about that.
Totally. So 4th Tuesday of the month in verygoodmothersclubhouse.com, we'll meet at noon Pacific Standard Time. And it's always fun and people bring their questions and we have really meaningful conversation. And season 3, what I am really excited for is some interviews with people other than us, though I love interviewing you. You'll be my favorite interview.
Yeah.
But we want to have guests.
Hopefully some guests.
Oh my gosh. Yes, for sure. We'll find them.
Yeah.
So
Super exciting.
okay.
Yay.
We're
love
excited
you
to
guys.
see you guys are doing so good. We're making this because you are worth making this for. You are such a good, loving parent to your children, child, whomever. And we just want you to be encouraged and supported on this journey of life. So thanks for being here with us. We'll see you soon.